Okay guys, I just went outside and I watered some of my plants and I saw that a lot of my iris are in bloom. So I thought maybe we could just paint some iris quickly. Grandpa brought these in. They fell off one of the plants, and so they give us a really good up close look at an iris. You can see there's lots of layers of the stalk before the leaf. The leaf is kind of turned before it opens up. And then on this same stalk, there can be more than one bloom. So then they would grow from the same stalk. Oh, look, here's another one, kind of similar. This one, the bloom is starting to open up. And this second bloom here, you can see also. So those are from our garden, but I'm gonna have to grab another paper towel. I just dripped all over our paper here with water. That's all right. Okay, so I thought I like to draw iris a lot because I think they're very pretty flowers. I think they're so unusual. Their petals just are so, sometimes they're curly on the edges, and I just feel like they look like they're dancing. Their stalks are quite straight, you can see here. Well, actually there's several kinds, and these are kind of curved a little more. This is called a Siberian iris. That's not the one I thought we would paint. This is called a bearded iris, and these are the ones I thought we would draw and paint today. So we'll go back to this one. They come in all colors, and some of the edges, those are Siberian. This is a bearded. Look at that, isn't that pretty? The flowers all on this one are all the same color, and then they have this little orange on these two petals that come down. If you were to look at the other side of this iris, you'd see these two petals, and then there's another one coming down, and then there's three petals going up. But they're just so frilly. And so when I use pen on them, I kind of like to think that my pen is dancing when it just creates their shape. So we'll go ahead and we'll just start with some dry paper and a little bit of color. And I've got a lot of water on my brush here. I'm just going to dab my brush, just not at the tip, but at the edge where it goes into the handle, so that it won't have quite as much water that it's bringing out on our paper. Okay, so I'm just bringing, oh, that's kind of fun when the paint just starts to move around in the water. And so then usually they kind of have a, how we saw, out here, and kind of up. Sometimes they're a little more ruffly, and sometimes I'll bring in that ruffle with my pen, but that's with the brush too. I'm kind of switched over to, I have a new brush, another triangle brush, and I kind of switched from my dagger brush, using that the most, to using this one for now. I have them in several sizes. This is my medium size, and I think I really want my small size, but that's why I'm having so much water come on my paper, is because this brush can hold more water. So it brings more water than I'm anticipating right now. But we can also work with that, and let's just dab different areas and let, so I've got the paint on my brush, and I'm just coming down here, and the paper's so wet that I can kind of dab it, and the color will start to bleed out, which is very pretty. It's one of the characteristics of watercolor that make people really love it, is how it just flows in the water. Sometimes you have to, it will just start flowing itself, and then other times you have to kind of guide it a little bit. I've got a lot of paint on my brush here because it's really coming out a strong color. So I'm just playing a little bit with the shapes that we already put on the board. One thing with the irises, when I do paint them, I often forget to leave any white space for those, so I come back in and I put those in, but they're in on top of other color and they don't always show up as much as I think they maybe could. Okay, so there's 2. Let's do one more. Actually, did we remember when we saw on the, well, let's just go ahead and do one more like we are seeing here. And it can be maybe, yeah. Maybe I'll bring another one up here, down here. So our pen, when we come back in and use it, are going to kind of accentuate the shape a little bit more, or bring out the shape a little bit more. Right now they're still quite wet. So one thing about the stalks on these, did you see how thick they are? And man, they get really thick as they get older. And so that's kind of fun. They also kind of have a little, I showed you how the covering is there. Let's go back, well, so we don't see it so much here, but you can see that orange that I was talking about. But so our stems right up by the flowers can kind of have a little bit of brown to them because of the covering that we showed you that the stem uses for these, but I often just bring them down, and I think I'll keep this quite simple. I may bring, you know how it showed the little, another little place where they're attaching onto our stem. We can go back and bring that other little, it looks like a little flower pod. And when this is more dry, I'll put a little bit of purple there so we can see that it's a little flower pod. We can bring another color for their leaves. Now these leaves, they kind of go up and over, where these are Siberian iris and their leaves go straight up and stay straight up. But the bearded iris go, well, I was just trying to show you. Maybe I'm not gonna, these are Asiatic irises, these are different. Well, we'll just go ahead and put a little bit of foliage in. And it's pretty simple because they don't have little individual leaves. They're long, just kind of long green leaves. And they do keep fanning out. So sometimes I think that we're going to leave this one as simple as that, and then we'll bring in our pen and then we'll bring in a little bit more color, but I think I'd like it to be as simple as that. So there we go. There's our bearded iris. And now let me just let this one dry, but here's one that I had done a different time, and it's kind of a lot of iris here, and what differentiates them is the pen. And so I think actually on these I would like to do a little more of their flowers, because I don't think they're quite thick enough for this big. The number of iris that we have up at the top, you can see that these iris are actually in a big group. So some of the leaves that we put in, you have to decide, they kind of all blend together, so you have to decide how many and which ones you want to be able to be actually prominent or show up the most. Okay, so I've kind of done a little bit with my pen, looks like earlier here, but I'm just going to go ahead and I actually have my heat gun all set up here, so let me just see if I can't get that dry so my hand doesn't go across it. Okay, that makes it much easier now to go in and put some pens. So I'm gonna kind of just, I don't always follow along exactly where the color is with my lines, but back here I'm gonna just bring this and kind of bring it out like this. And I like I said, I think I mentioned before, I like to kind of just feel like my pen is just kind of dancing across the top of these because they're just so beautiful. And there's a lot of beautiful curves in these flowers. And see, these are in the back, so they're not really shown that much, but it's nice to see them. Now this is the yellow that I had mentioned that you put on the petals, and that looks like it's trying to figure out where that is on the leaves, because it may be on one of the flowers behind, and then I don't need to. So I think that kind of brought these to life a little bit more. I'm gonna come down on some of the stems. I don't want to have a lot of up and down motion there. There we go. We've just kind of given it some curves so that it's kind of more graceful. Sometimes the up and down, now that's not the shape of an iris that I just did there. That's more like a tulip because they're broader. But okay, that's our started iris. Now remember, I always try to remind you, you want to sign your work. So I just went ahead and signed it. And I'm kind of seeing here that I may want to add just a little more, kind of to break up that straight line. Okay, and the colors are, I'm actually going to change my brush. Well, I'll use the paint that I've gotten here, and I'll just bring in some yellow. When you were on top of the already painted, this is a smaller triangle brush. This is one of my new ones. There. When you come in after, you're not going to see it quite as bright, but that's okay. Your eye recognizes it. Okay, so that's our joint one, and that's our iris. I hope this is, oh yeah, no, we're going to come back for a minute and just let the pen go on this one too. So just a second more. I know that the videos are good when they're shorter. We're going to go ahead and sign it. And now I'm just going to have my pen just dance along here so that we get some really pretty shapes going. And ooh, getting a little bit messy, I think. Okay. Again, this is that lovely shape. And this is where we're going to put the yellow. And this one's, there we go, a little more. This one has a third that I didn't identify there. We're going to come down on there. Oh, it's a little bit more narrow, more like that kind of leaf. That's all right, but I am going to bring in a little bit of purple right there for this flower. First, we're going to put just a little bit of purple right here above, so it's kind of going to open up, kind of like these, where they're still in their bud form. And they really come to quite a point. It's quite surprising. I'm going to add just a little bit of darkness to accentuate some of these, and then we're going to add, I'm not going to put any more purple to the bottom part because I do want to put that orange in for a second here. See if we can get it to show up a little more. Yep, we got a good amount of orange here. Sometimes there's some orange in the middle of these too. Now the one thing I'm seeing on this is I like to have a little more variance in color on my stems. So I'm gonna, there we go, we're just gonna add a little bit of, maybe a little bit of blue there. Okay. I did want to keep it simple, so I don't want to keep, and I don't like it repetitive, so, okay, we're gonna stop. Okay, there's our iris. Have fun painting them, and then I'll come back. I'm going to do a dandelion. I was out watering, remember, and I pulled some dandelions, so we'll do that one next. Love you guys. Happy painting.